In the 237-year history of the United States, there have been only a handful of times when war was fought on U.S. soil. One war that many people seem to forget about is the War of 1812. Many of us are well versed in the American Revolution, but fail to recognize the importance of the war that took place only a few decades later in 1812. At the center of this conflict was the war between Great Britain and a Napoleon-led France. In an effort to stop trade between the U.S. and France, Great Britain used a naval blockade of the United States coastline to stop cargo ships bound for France. Along with the blockade, Great Britain also used a controversial tactic called impressment. Impressment involved British sailors boarding American ships and subsequently forcing the American sailors to serve in the British Navy. The British claimed that these U.S. sailors were deserters of the British Navy, which in many cases was not true. Native American hostility towards westward expansion also agitated U.S. warhawks like Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun to cry out for war. William Henry Harrison led U.S. troops to a victory in 1811 in the Battle of Tippecanoe against Native Americans in Indiana, after him and his troops were attacked by a group of Indians who were said to have been persuaded to fight by the British. Finally, on May 11, 1812, the U.S. Congress, backed by President James Madison, declared war on Great Britain. After the declaration, U.S. quickly attacked Canada, still a British colony, in order to strike the first blow. The British Canadians under Sir Isaac Brock and the Shawnee war chief Tecumseh were able to mount a successful defense of their land. However, the U.S. did have success fighting against the Indians in the West. Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry was able to win a decisive naval victory in the Battle of Lake Erie, while Harrison was able to win the Battle of Thames to retake Detroit and subsequently kill Tecumseh. During the same time, the U.S. Navy was able to win many victories over the British during the early stages of the war. In 1814, the British defeated Napoleon and were now able to turn their full attention to the war in the United States. In August of that year, British reinforcements sailed up the Chesapeake Bay and soon marched into Washington, D.C. On December 24th, the British took over the U.S. Capitol with little resistance. They burned down many U.S. government buildings, including the Capitol and the White House. If not for the quick thinking of the president's wife, Dolly Madison, many famous U.S. relics, including the presidential portrait of George Washington, may have been burned in the fires or looted by the British. The British continued their campaign by attacking Baltimore's Fort McHenry. The British bombed the fort for 25 straight hours, only to have the U.S. soldiers within the fort raise a giant American flag the following morning after withstanding the onslaught. The sight of the Stars and Stripes being raised over the battlements inspired a young man named Francis Scott Key to write a poem titled The Star-Spangled Banner. This famous poem would later become the United States national anthem. After this failed attempt to take McHenry, the British forces left the Chesapeake Bay and began preparing for an attack against New Orleans. Once they failed in the Chesapeake, the British soon took up discussions with the U.S. for an armistice. On December 24, 1814, the USA and Great Britain signed the Treaty of Ghent, which effectively ended the war. Although the war was officially over, the U.S. and British troops in New Orleans did not get the message in time to stop the impending attack. On January 8, 1815, the British mounted a massive assault on the city of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson, commanding the U.S. troops, was able to scrape together all of the able-bodied soldiers he could find within the city of New Orleans. His determination led to a U.S. victory that embarrassed the British and boosted American spirits, despite the fact that the U.S. had not achieved any of its pre-war goals. Although the war did not gain the U.S. much in anything material, the victory ushered in an era of good feelings, along with an increased self-confidence and a growing spirit of American expansion. Furthermore, the War of 1812 let the world know that the United States was a strong nation and that it was here to stay.